Honorable Deputy Speaker, I am glad to follow the Honorable Foreign Minister. When you listen to his speech, it's as if he has woken from a deep slumber, having been a part of an administration which has made this country to go into sovereign default for the first time in our history. Now we have ultimately been able to somehow successfully negotiate an extended fund program. Now, this is an important milestone. None of us disagree with that. So therefore, the IMF's endorsement is going to certainly restore confidence in our country's path to recovery. So, in reaching this milestone, of course, we would be required to address the fundamental weaknesses in our financial system and the monetary network. And this is important, more than important. I mean, what is more important is not the money that we are getting, but what ultimately the program will unlock as far as the country is concerned in order for us to borrow again in order to meet the essential needs of the country. So, with this improved sentiment, we are now witnessing a reducing pace in inflation, and it's important for us to continue on this path. But it is somehow, when you look at some in this house, it has become very fashionable to vilify the IMF, and this kind of crackpot who are in the lunatic fringe are keeping on heaping blame on the IMF. But here, I would like to, along with every citizen of Sri Lanka, thank the IMF, its managing director, the co-heads of the Sri Lanka staff team, Sri Lanka resident representative, and all other members of the IMF staff team for tirelessly working around the clock to provide Sri Lanka the much-needed EFF, being the platform to enable Sri Lanka to come out of the economic problems that we have got into. The IMF has only identified the issues, being the program objectives that need to be addressed for Sri Lanka to get out of this perilous situation. The solution to achieve the objectives are proposals by the government of Sri Lanka and not those imposed on the government by the IMF. Honorable Speaker, the government of Sri Lanka, including the finance minister, the president, in this house have misrepresented on numerous occasions, portraying these are proposals of the IMF and made the IMF the monster in the room. I am not convinced the proposals of the authorities, government of Sri Lanka and the bureaucrats, are the optimum solution to address the issues identified by the IMF, which will lead Sri Lanka achieving the objectives laid down in the extended fund facility that has been now granted. This conclusion of mine is based on the high risk assigned by the IMF staff team itself, based on the medium-term risk analysis, page 63 of the staff report, in relation to the program succeeding as envisaged. I touch on the four main areas. One, tax policy reforms under the theme fiscal consolidation. Then B, energy pricing under the theme fiscal consolidation. C, autonomous central bank under the theme restoring price stability and rebuilding external buffers. Then finally, governance under the theme reducing corruption vulnerabilities. On tax policy reforms, Sri Lanka's tax to GDP ratio is 7.3%, being the lowest in the world. This is an abysmal position compared to other nations. The IMF staff team has rightly identified the reasons for the weak tax performance being: 1, low tax rates; 2, narrow tax network; and 3, low collection efficiency. So, while I agree tax rates have to be increased, the elephant in the room is a narrow tax net and low collection efficiency, which two are interlinked and closed with corruption. Majority of Sri Lanka's elite do not pay taxes in Sri Lanka. A robust tax mechanism has to be developed to bring these evaders into the tax net and tax this group of people. That should have been the paramount motive. This was the ideal opportunity to bring these evaders into the tax net. And once again, we are allowing them, like always, these evaders are out of the equation. And targeted the middle and lower income groups to widen the tax net. These evaders do not keep their monies under the mattress. All their monies are in deposit accounts with banks and non-bank financial institutions. And this was the ideal opportunity to withhold a higher percentage as tax, say about 20%, and integrate the inland revenue remis system with the systems operated by the withholding agents to ensure these taxes are paid to the tax department under the respective TIN numbers, thus sidestepping the involvement of officials in the tax department to record taxes received in an ad hoc manner. This exercise, even in the short term, would have alone provided 3 times the revenue projected based on the currently implemented system. This would have enabled the tax department to have on record a database of potential evaders and pursue them to pay up in the following years. Based on the current interest rate environment, where interest rates have more than doubled, even the people in the lower rungs of society would not have complained, as their take-home post-withholding would still have been more than what they would have got before the crisis. Mr. Deputy Speaker, one of the vulnerabilities identified by the IMF staff team that would contribute to this program failing is large shocks. The current backdrop of professionals and middle-income earners protesting on the streets is a recipe for a large shock to the detriment of the program objectives. The authorities opting to bring the middle and lower income earners into tax net while leaving an opening for the evaders to continue to evade is a demonstration of the corrupt mindset and the agenda-based policy formulation of the current government. Therefore, this is a clear demonstration of the corruption prevalent within the system, which I hope the IMF's Governance Diagnostic Mission will focus and contain. Mr. Deputy Speaker, like on tax reform, energy pricing solution to of the government was again targeted at groups in the lower ranks of the economy. Here too, the narrative of the government of Sri Lanka was the pricing formula which was imposed by the saying that it was imposed by the IMF, and the monster in the room that was shown was the IMF. Quite conversely, IMF's energy price program objective was to have cost recovery based pricing structure. But in doing that, the government's formulation of the cost recovery pricing structure was seriously flawed. Honourable Speaker, the government of Sri Lanka did not consider an important component of the electricity cost, being the cost of electricity generated by hydro electric dams. Honourable Speaker, hydroelectricity generated at Sri Lankan rupees 2 per unit is a national asset, and every household in Sri Lanka has an equal claim on this national asset. Based on the government of Sri Lanka's flawed pricing formula, the government has arbitrarily forfeited the low consumption households' equal claim to hydroelectricity for the benefit of the high consumption users. This disgruntled group of people is another recipe for large shock the IMF report highlights, which could contribute to this program failing. Now, independent central bank. We are here today debating the IMF extended fund facility program because we had the failed central bank run by politicians and political cronies. An independent central bank is paramount. Therefore, we have now a new central bank bill which has been tabled. Does the new central bank bill give independence to the central bank? The language in the bill in relation to the autonomy of the central bank may portray autonomy of the central bank. But then, when you carefully look at it, now look at how these appointments are going to be made. Now, appointment of governor. Practically, Ranil Wickremesinghe, the minister, recommends to Ranil Wickremesinghe, the president, and subject to the approval of the Constitutional Council, controlled by Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. Ranil Wickremesinghe, the president, shall appoint the governor. Is that independence? No. Similarly, every other appointment is going to be made in the similar manner. And therefore, that's again, this was alluded to even by the former governor of the central bank, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy in a recent discussion that there are issues regarding the appointment of officials to the central bank. Therefore, these things have to be carefully looked at. Therefore, on the governance issue also I can talk at length. But however, now since this is an essential situation in which we have no other option but to agree to these conditionalities that have been imposed, it is important for us to continue in this path if we are to go for recovery, and therefore with those comments I conclude. Thank you.